Welcome to Parrot Literary Corner. My name is Mutiu Olawuyi, and in today's show we have a unique guest as usual. And I also have my partner with me who will also drive us through this show from the beginning to the end. Where, as usual, I will always be coming in to ask questions where the need arises. Dustin, please over to you.
Well, hello, I am Dustin Pickering. Today we have Robin Wyatt Dunn, who is author of many books and collections of poetry, including Death Songs, which my own Transcendent Zero Press published. Robin, would you like to tell us more about yourself, including a little bit about your books and your journey as a writer?
Sure. I was born in the least populous state in the U.S., which is Wyoming, but I only lived there for a few months. My dad was a naturalist. He's the unarmed kind of ranger, so he would just go around flirting with the ladies and talking about plants. And then my parents got married. Um, I wrote my first. I tell people I've been a serious writer for 10 years because I first published a book in 2011 called Los Angeles or American Pharaohs. And I think I'm almost up to 30 books by now. So that's about three a year. So some people would call me a prostitute for that. And others would say, "Oh, good job." So I'm sort of in between there somewhere, But I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun.
So, in these 10 years of working as a what you call a serious writer, prostituting yourself, you have
A working girl, yes.
yes. Do you have a moment? Was there a moment when you were super proud of a book and you just felt like this is my baby, this is my accomplishment?
Sure. Well, they're all my children. And, my mother gives me some flack about it. And, she wants grandchildren, which she has none at present. So she says, Robin, those books are not your children. You need real children. And I don't disagree with her, of course. But, I do see them as my children also. And just like with the real children, you never forget your first one, right? So that's still has a special place in my heart because you never know, if you can do it until you do it. A lot of people talk about doing things like writing books or making movies, and you never know what it's going to be like until you really do it and find out. Um, who's the guy who wrote Sandman? Neil Gaiman, he came to books after comics, and he told my favorite writer, Gene Wolfe, he says to Gene, I finally figured out how to write a novel. And Gene says, no, Neil, you never figure out how to write a novel. You only figure out how to write the one that you're on. So everyone is different, of course.
Right. So of course, 30 books is quite a bit. One time you mentioned in a discussion with me, I hope you don't mind me mentioning, you used the phrase "poets are unpaid politicians." I thought that was interesting. I've always thought back on that, and I thought that was a fascinating concept to think about. And do you have any thoughts to elaborate on that further?
Sure. Well, in Africa and in Hungary also, and in Romania, cultures that have a little more in touch with their roots. I would include Czechoslovakia too, who of course elected Václav Havel. But in a way, we're lucky, Dustin, in America because the government doesn't want to kill us for being poets. And that's not true all over the world. Certainly in the Arabic world, obviously, you're much under threat of death, depending on how popular you are if you're a poet. So obviously, the tradition is ancient because language and how it works is so tied in with how we see the world. And if we're skilled at using language and inventing new language, then we can invent new ways of living. So it's already political, just by its nature. But for whatever reason in America, it was sidelined and turned into, we're kind of like these carnies, we were turned into carnival, curiosities rather than leaders for the most part. So certainly in America, I'd say that's true, where we still do that work by nature and people actually still listen to us. It just has that cover of being irrelevant.
That's interesting. That's quite a thoughtful concept there. So In my opinion, and I agree with you. I mean, there have been cases in recent history where writers have been imprisoned and punished, some put to death or publicly in different countries. Basically, I think you're very correct in that. And you elucidate pretty well what the power of poetry really is, and even as Percy Shelley wrote, that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world, and so we have some insight on that. And you're definitely correct that in America we're not really taken seriously, and I think that has a lot to do with sort of a, not to knock my fellow countrymen, but a culture of illiteracy. It's just there's no pride anymore in being the rabble-rousing poet or the instigator. Why do you think that is?
I disagree with you only very slightly in that, the people do still love us, but the ways that love is allowed to be shown through the media is so heavily censored now that if you didn't seek out one of us and talk to us and get to know us through whatever means, you wouldn't know us. You wouldn't know what we're doing. Right. You wouldn't know who we are. So I've been impressed with Americans. Remember, they remember because they need what we do, what we're doing. It's so connected to the force of life. And so Correct. We're vital in that sense. But as you say, we've been totally sidelined officially. So
right.
It's very Soviet, where everyone knows the most popular writers in the Soviet times, and you would get it by samizdat, right? And samizdat is going to come back in a big way here in North America. It already is here, because the methods by which things are censored are becoming more and more Sovietized, with a central Politburo who decides, what the line is. And there's always been elements of that. It's just being, more streamlined, more efficient, right? America's great at making things more efficient. So now we'll have the most efficient censorship in the world.
I love your sense of humor about it, but yes, it's very true. It's definitely, we're definitely getting into a very problematic situation and people are, even our fellow poets are even borrowing this line.
Well, and that's Soviet again too, right? Where even people we love, people we respect, their work might be amazing, but their politics are aligned with the state. And you could have all kinds of reasons for agreeing with the state. And, we'll probably get to a point. I mean, even now where, if your mortgage is threatened and you have children at home, can you afford, right, to be as outspoken as I am as a poet? I mean, in a way, I've been able to afford it because I don't have the mortgage, wife, and children, right? But if I did, what pressure would be brought to bear on me? More right. would anyway.
When the economics definitely comes into the factor is people living in fear, and uncertainty are not going to be as outspoken in general, I think, because then there's the possibility of you're cut. You're already on the hinge, and there you go. They cut the rope and you're gone. So tell us a little bit about your educational background as well.
Right. Well, I'm a big fan of education. The Latin root means leading out, right? Ducere, to lead, and a is out. So education is to go out of wherever you're at and see the world. So I was fortunate that I was an adventurous soul, and I got good grades in high school. So I went to New York from California at a Jesuit university in the Bronx called Fordham. And then I was fortunate again that I got to study for a year at Oxford, 1999 to 2000. They had a sister school relationship with a college called Blackfriars, where it's the youngest and the oldest college there because it was built early in the 15th century or 14th century, and then they threw the Catholics out, with the Protestant Reformation. So they only allowed the Blackfriars back officially in the 1920s or something. I'm not Catholic, but anyway, they were good to me. The Jesuits know how to hire good teachers. But I fell out of love with education for all the reasons we've been talking about. They're been Sovietized too. The thought control is much tighter now. So if you don't agree with the official line, and it is, the word can be misleading, but in the most general terms, it is a liberal elite. Even though I was a liberal most of my life, I'm not now, I guess. And anyway, that word, but you know what I mean to an extent.
Right.
And so that official line is aligned with universities, and if you fall out of that official line, you're sidelined. It's not just the liberal position, it's basically anything that challenges authority. If you're too much of a loudmouth, you're going to be sidelined. So I refer everyone to the root of education, which is simply to travel, right? To go out from where you're at and to see the world. And that's the truest education.
That's a wonderful thought. And self-education is very important, I think. And I'm an autodidact, so it's been quite a journey for me, reading mostly, different paradigms of thought and poets and writers and all kinds of people, and just venturing into different subjects. And so
that's why everyone likes you, Dustin, because you're an omnivore.
I'm an omnivore. There you go. So you've also been nominated for many different awards for your literature. What maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how you feel about the award system?
Sure.
In general.
I didn't win any of them.
Right.
I was fortunate to be nominated for Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. I was a semi-finalist, and that felt good. I wasn't the face of Los Angeles at that time, which is fine. It's a huge city, but it's nice to be considered. And I'm proud. I've been nominated twice now for the Rising Award, which is the Science Fiction Poetry Writers of America give that to the best science fiction or fantasy poem. So a poem that was published called Disassembly at Auction was nominated twice. It's eligible for 2 years, so it's the same poem that was nominated last year, and then I guess it automatically gets renominated this year. It's a poem about a sort of mostly dead cyborg, but his genitals still work along with some other body parts, and he's being auctioned off in parts at an auction. So that's the poem, Disassembly at Auction.
That's interesting. Would you like to maybe read the poem or read another poem of yours?
Sure, let's read that one. It's a good poem. I'll find it here.
And you are watching the New York Parrots Literary Corner. And I'm Dustin Pickering with Robin Wyatt Dunn. Please subscribe to our channel. It's a wonderful channel. You'll get satisfying content, I promise.
So this is Disassembly at Auction. It was published in volume 30, number 4 of Mobius, the Journal of Social Change. Thanks very much to F.J. Bergman, the editor. Disassembly at Auction. The unit has a shattered memory core and a hallucinatory blue smear over the left retina, chassis intact with some bruising of the metal, served in the last American war. Gonad still functional, brain missing, left leg is a total loss, right still has its internal fluids. The paint is a classic chemical type, hard to find now. All industrial processes used to create it are no longer used. Last owner, a Canadian slaver, lot sold as a piece. As a memento, we provide this holographic tape of the unit's voice.
Impressive. Left leg is a total loss. What message are you trying to convey there?
Well, I can't remember now whether I wrote it before or after I hurt my left leg in Canada. If you're born in Canada, you know always to look at the ground because it's always icing over. But if you're not from Canada, you sometimes look ahead of you in winter. And so I made the mistake of looking ahead of me and slipped on the ice and really hurt my knee. And I'll take this opportunity to condemn Canadian socialized medicine, which looks good, but that's all it is. They don't give you any care. So they basically told me to go fuck myself. So thanks for that, Canada. And so that's partly what that poem is about. But I mean, in general, you know, it's
and unpopular opinions.
it's the theme of men. You know, men are so often disposable, and so are our body parts. You know, we're not women. Men and women are different in society, and so the man can just be obliterated, and you know, everyone just kind of shrugs. You know, even if he's a really popular guy, the most popular guy in town, in the world, even, we all just say, well, you know, it's different than when a woman dies. So in a sense, that's my feelings about, the male body as this disposable artifact.
That's almost counterintuitive as well. I think there's a lot of focus on women, reproductive rights, and women in general, females, and so I don't think many people would not consider that point of view. What brought you to that conclusion, other than being a man, of course?
Sure. Well, I mean,
go ahead.
It helps to be a man to think about the male body, but there are women who agree with that view also, right, of men being disposable in a way that women are not, in war and in other ways. I mean, I did used to call myself a feminist, but I moved away from that because feminism stopped being about gender equality and gender inclusion for men and for women, and equality between the sexes, and seemed to be about something else. And it's not always easy to do, but I do think it's good to subscribe to the idea that two wrongs don't make a right, and the evils of men over history, certainly men have done many evil things over history, doesn't mean that we should now do more evil things to men. We have to find a better way to live together. And again, I think that our ancestors have a lot to teach us there, where there were women tribal councils and male tribal councils, and the good of the group would go forward in time when men and women could agree.
Right.
Men and women have different interests, but obviously our interests overlap on children and nature and other things. So, that's wisdom that, remains alive.
I like to add here that, most times people misinterpret this gender rights or human rights activism. And I keep repeating that what is impossible in life is equality. What is possible is equity. We should be fighting for gender equity and not gender equality. That's the only thing you can achieve in life. So that's why people get frustrated. At a stage you realize that there'll be no way you're not going to be biased if you are fighting for gender equality. So as an activist, if you truly want to achieve, you have to focus on equity and not equality. I love to convey this message based on my experience too, as a gender equity activist. We've published a lot of work on this, even collection of poetry against gender violence, etc. So that's just my message.
Yes, and I think probably including myself don't have as clear as an understanding as we need to on the difference between equity and equality. Could you say more about that? How are they two different to you?
I think he was asking you a question.
Yes, I was just curious how you see the difference between.
Are you asking me or are you asking him?
Okay.
Either one of you, but
Actually, if you look at this part, if you look at population growth, in the past we used to have more male than female, and as the year goes by, we realize that we have more female than male, and that's why they have more opportunities nowadays. So that's why today you have men's rights activists. You have to look at where you can balance the equation. There are some you can't have equality when the population are not the same. When you don't have the same population of male and female, how can you have equality? Are you going to kill certain number of gender to have them equal so that you can provide equal opportunity for them? That cannot work. That's why equity is the only solution.
For me, I think equity is about fair treatment, equal opportunity, things of that nature. Equality is like making the same, if we want to distinguish between the two. Sometimes people say equality and they mean equity.
Yes.
And some people don't distinguish between the two so much. And I think equality would be, as we're defined it, as we're seeing here, making absolutely, on the same level in terms of, there's differences, as we were speaking of, between men and women. So trying to make us on the exact same plane, like two-dimensional, would be would be foolish. It would be a fool's errand. And I think that, equity is about fair and equal treatment. It's not about making equal the same. It's
Gender balance.
Equal sign being right, and being treated fairly, and everyone is entitled to be treated fairly as long as they're treating others fairly. Everyone's entitled to equal treatment, but you're not entitled to more or less based on gender, or any other factor. We're all entitled to the same treatment as fair and fair people in this country, as well as in others. We hope to bring up the countries that are behind in this. See that happening somewhat in the world today. But yeah, it's I think that's my distinguishing mark between the two.
I think the other problem that comes into it is, the old saying, he who has the gold makes the rules, and that's the golden rule. And so when in all of these, matters, theory is one thing, and then practice is something else. So, it depends who we're talking about. And again, poets have a problem here because so often we either have no money, or if you take like Robert Lowell, you have a lot of money. And so there's that tradition of gentleman poets, right, where you inherit a fortune and then you can afford to do the work of poetry. So, and then there were traditions that were murdered. A friend of mine taught me more about the Irish tradition of poetry, where it was deeply intertwined with the legal system and their diplomatic core between tribes. And so you would get a lot of money for being an Irish poet, before they were invaded by other peoples. So money is important. We use it all the time, and it's although it can be obviously a corrupting force, it can also be a force for good if society agrees to put money, towards the things that it values. Money and time, just like you gentlemen are putting your money and time towards something that you value. When the larger corporations don't, they've decided that what we're saying is not interesting.
Right. And it's about accumulating money rather than trying to, promote the general welfare. I think that's definitely a point to be made. So back to the poetry and the writing, scenarios here. So how active have you been in poetry circles as far as with other communities and just in general, like where you've been and all the places you've traveled?
Yes, well, I sort of became a serious writer, as I say, in Los Angeles, and I was involved with literary circles there, and I sort of began with genre circles and then moved more towards the literary. I always enjoyed the blending of high and low brow and the meeting between the haute couture and the language of the street. And Los Angeles is a great place for that because it has that tradition of the noir where, the street smarts meet the big money. And, the big money has that tradition of high culture. So I was certainly influenced by that history in Los Angeles. And I was involved with some genre groups, and then I did get more involved with poetry groups. There's a friend of mine, I still do Zoom poetry meetings with him. And he's in Los Angeles, very nice man named Alex Frankel. He was running Second Sunday Poetry. That was an open mic in the San Fernando Valley to give, a voice for local poets and to come and read their work. So I was a guest speaker there a couple of times, and so I'm still involved with those poets, and I'm still involved with one genre group that I mentioned, the Science Fiction Writers of America, the Science Fiction Poetry Writers of America, SFPA. They're a very nice group of people. And, again, it's sort of funny, like there's a good thing about having no money in that the stakes are really low. So the fights are very infrequent in the poetry science fiction writers, whether there's lots of fights in the science fiction, short story writers and the horror fiction writers, because at least until recently, there used to be more money. You could actually make a living if you're lucky more easily writing a horror novel or a science fiction novel. But of course, if you're writing science fiction poetry or horror poetry exclusively, again, you can't make a living. So, but they're a nice group of people.
Right. Oh, of course, it's good to be involved in community, and you get a mirror to yourself as well as encouragement, and people invest in you as a person, and they tell you, they encourage you to on your work as well, not just as you as a person, but it's good to have people that you work with and talk with. So I had a question about Los Angeles Review of Los Angeles. What happened with that? Is it still going on, or
yes,
are you still doing that? Or?
I published 2 zines, and that's the literary one, and the genre one is called Chrome Baby, and they're both available. All of my work that I write is available on robindunn.com, and the work that I edit, also those 2 zines. So the one you mentioned, yes, the Los Angeles Review of Los Angeles, it's kind of poking fun at the Los Angeles Review, who's slightly older than me by about 5 years, and they're more academic and have a little more money. But they also didn't really focus on Los Angeles. They were focused on, they wanted to be like the Paris Review, which has really nothing whatsoever to do with Paris. It's actually a CIA project, created in the 50s by the CIA to fight the Cold War in Europe, basically. But they wanted to be that on that scale, and so I'm a dirty little zine, that gets into the dirty side of Los Angeles, which is a rich and growing and full of inspiration in the dirt of LA. So yes, it's still alive. I only publish it once a year now in the summers, but it's been going since 2012. So this will be our 9th. Well, I did publish a few more issues per year at the beginning, and now I'm down to 1 a year, but I'm still keeping it alive. Chrome Baby, I've done once a month since 2012, and this month, April 1st, will be issue 100. So Chrome Baby's having issue 100, so 100 months of Chrome Baby. And it's a literary science fiction, which is sometimes called slipstream. But again, I don't like genre distinction so much as, they're useful, but they are also can get in the way. I just look for things that I like. And as you know, it takes a lot of time to edit and publish things. So, we get to please ourselves.
Right. That's definitely, I agree. It's very time consuming and writing. And how do you balance writing your own work with editing as well? Both of those are very time consuming, labor extensive. And how do you go about balancing your time with that?
I'm totally ruthless. I put myself first. And so my own work always comes first. And but I feel that I need to get back to the community, and obviously I enjoy it, and I get something out of it. I don't get money out of it; costs me money and time, but I feel good doing it. So I still like you gentlemen. I'm not paying you, and you're not paying me. We're just doing this because we enjoy it. So that's why I'm an editor.
I have a question.
Yeah, that's the only reason you
like this. You keep mentioning how important having money is for poets or literary or creative minds across the globe. But you've not been able to provide a solution to the problem. You only identify the problem. What is the way forward?
Yes. I don't know.
We've answered the question.
We have to monetize these things. Keep promoting. Just keep doing our work and hope that the money comes.
I've been trying to get Dustin to buy Bitcoin over here, and that's another CIA weapon. The CIA, the best things the CIA has ever done is invent Bitcoin, and it's a weapon to destroy the banks to create a new and more evil bank, basically. But in the meantime, it's a way to get money to the people. So that's one way. It's not a very satisfying answer, but that's really the only practical one that I have, I think.
Invest in Bitcoin. If you're an editor, invest
in Bitcoin. So what message? I understand that this is a serious challenge that 80% or 90% of creative writers across the globe face with regards to getting something to survive and sustaining their passion to change the environment. What do you feel the government can do? How do you feel writers can come together to come up with something tangible that can solve this problem?
Well, I'm an anarchist, so even though I don't advocate murdering the government, I think it would be a good idea for us to have as little to do with the government as possible. The emperor is best when he's far away. And this is certainly true for art. The more we can support each other and the more we can be independent, and then we can be interdependent, without the need for government. So that's more or less my view. I think the more the government gets involved, the more Soviet it becomes. They can pick their favorites, and they can then tell you what to write and what to publish.
And they can influence you with the ideologies and use the artist as their sledgehammer, per se.
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to read another poem?
Okay. Here's one I wrote today. This one is very short. The bitter truth, gourd wine, numberless incision wrapped tight. My mummy, my mercurochrome, ecstatic scenery in the rear, burning to the sky.
What is that about?
I don't know.
I just like your answer, A scholar once said that if you say you don't know, you've already answered the question. That's indeed good. I love that. Go ahead.
It worked for Plato, right? That was Plato's favorite answer,
Just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know. Yeah. Admitting your ignorance is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
I was asking a Swedish sport last time that what inspired him to write his poem, and he said he never gets inspiration; he just writes. Do you do the same?
No, I do need inspiration. It's almost always from music. Sometimes I've written entire books by listening to the same song over and over again. So almost all my inspiration is from music. There's and here we are at the New York. Well, I see New York is no longer in your name. Are you still the New York Parrot?
Yes.
Yes. So, New York and literature, of course, have a long history together, and they have the reputation of being snobs about literature, and some, to a degree, well earned because they spend a lot of time with it. But there was some, sort of New Yorky joke about listening to music, where, well, I'm just, so the writer says, I'm just getting so tired of writing these manuscripts and, from start to finish. Can't I just send the editor, what a song list of what I was listening to, while I was writing it, and then he doesn't even need to publish it, So it's this very, New York. Oh, I'll just give you my inspiration, and the work itself doesn't matter. Anyway, that's the joke.
Right. So do you have any last words? Do you have any final words to convey to the audience and to the any future writers that may watch this in the coming days or the coming months, years, etc.?
Of course. Well, the way you first said that, it sounded like you were, the government about to execute me. So then, I'd have to make a crude gesture. But of course, it's better to interpret it as for the future generations of what can we say to them. And, writing is a cruel business, and it's a form of mental torture. But, again, like our ancestors, certain kinds of pain develop, strong men and women. So be willing to look at your pain and to experience your pain and then put it into words.
That's excellent. I think that says it all right there. Just be strong, keep wise. So in the regards to that, one final question. I think we have time, about 3 minutes. What makes you an edgy writer? What qualities and what subjects do you pursue that make you edgy, do you think?
William Burroughs said it best, he's not interested in a territory already explored. So he wants to go where no one has been. And so, that's terrifying. Burroughs is a terrifying man, even it doesn't, he was terrifying in all kinds of ways, certainly in his personal life as well as his work. But just focusing on the work alone, his work is absolutely terrifying. It's a kind of, it's a weapon that we still don't understand. So again, that's partly why governments are afraid of us, because we find these new weapons. We're like researchers, we're like scientists coming up with the new ways to, blow everyone's minds. Yeah. So that work is very dangerous because it frightens people, and it can also hurt yourself because the mind can enter into places that are dangerous. So you have to find new ways to protect yourself. So that's what the edges are about, is exploring places that either we've never been or that we haven't been to for a long time and are now new anyway because they, have lain dormant.
Right. Sometimes tradition can be a good weapon. You rediscover the spear in the bush.
Yes. Everything old is new again. History rhymes but doesn't repeat itself. Certainly.
Excellent aphorism.
Well,
we may have time to read. We may have time for you to read one more poem, if you have a short one, another short.
Yeah. Here's another one I wrote today. This one is, I saw you fall under the train of wind and sun, days Hesiod remembered to pray, perhaps your name, my work, his days, do not and must not, will not ever, not today, do not shit, not in the river, not under the sun, for there is nothing worth redeeming with your excrement.
Very interesting.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you,
Robin.
Thank you for what you've done so far. Messages conveyed to our viewers, and I hope that they've got our message. Dustin, if you have any last word to say to close this, please.
Subscribe to the channel.
Yes. Subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely. Both of us, all of us agree. Subscribe. Want to subscribe to the channel, get our ranks going, and make literature, put it on the map again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Keep up the work, the good work writers out there. Keep being the writers you are, whatever you're doing, keep the work going.
Bye.
Keep it up.
Thank you, gentlemen.